Dude, there's actually a YouTuber I want to show you guys. Do you guys know about Panacook? He does videos on Mario 64 and like the very intricate details of it. You might remember him from like the meme of like parallel universes in Mario 64. They can like glitch through to like beat a level with like less A presses. Dude, he made a video recently on invisible walls. It was 4 hours. I fucking love that shit. I'd fucking ate that shit up, dude. I devoured that shit, bro. It's so good. He has some shorts that kind of show off what generally his videos are like.
Previously, I released a video covering all the invisible walls in Super Mario 64, including these two on the ship and this one on the big house. But I missed a detail, which is that these invisible walls actually differ between the Japanese version and US version of the game, because they have slightly different level triangles. On the ship, the seam between these floors was moved slightly to the left
the
in the
graphics
US
are
version.
so insane,
So that
bro.
means the original Japanese version has a floor overlap here, while the US version has a floor gap. So that means the invisible wall inside the ship only exists on the US version and later, but the invisible wall on the outside of the ship is there on all versions. Separately, the triangles on the bottom of the red coin maze were also changed. The original Japanese version has floors under the whole maze, while the US version has floors only in the accessible areas. Now, because the triangles were changed, they got re-exported and reordered between versions. So for the triangles around the chimney, on the US version, the orange vertex is considered above the blue vertex, causing floor overshadowing.
It's literally, and he made it in 10 months.
But on the Japanese version, before the reordering, blue is above
There's a video
orange,
that's
so
like
there's
completely
no
like
invisible wall
this the
there.
whole way through. It's
Previously,
4 hours. Dude, let me show you. It's so insane. He goes into the exact reasons why there's invisible walls in the middle of Mario 64. This is like my favorite shit in the world. I fucking am addicted to this shit. I don't know why. I think it's because I made like Mario 64 ROM hacks like really shittily as a teenager. And I want to be a game designer, so Mario 64 is like super fascinating to me. But he goes through like literally every instance in the game of invisible walls appearing, and explains exactly why. Like he explains his grid and what it all means and why.
But 100%.
I mean, I could kind of explain. So basically, like, okay, everything's made out of a triangle, and there's 3 types of triangles: a wall triangle, floor triangle, ceiling triangle. For ceiling triangles, obviously, their hitbox is like a ceiling, right? But for some reason, they made it so the hitbox isn't capped on the top and infinitely scales upwards. So if there's a ceiling and there's no floor above it to block off the ceiling, the hitbox is just going to keep rising up into the infinity. So basically, like, what causes invisible walls is that there's a tiny little gap in the triangle where the ceiling doesn't hit the floor, so the ceiling hitbox seeps through the geometry and creates a tiny little hitbox that you could theoretically hit in some cases, but in most cases, you can jump through it.
Then still in Snowman's Land, we have this
is one of the craziest invisible walls, dude.
It has 2 edge vertices on top because the wall is a trapezoid.
It's
the
not
left
intended
edge vertex
now.
does a floor overlap, which is fine, but the right edge vertex does a floor gap.
Like they didn't line up. See they didn't line it up properly. So like units of the game like think that this is actually out of bounds because like if there's no ceiling below it, it will put out of bounds invisible walls, and the difference between which are resembled gray here, and the difference between out of bounds invisible walls versus ceiling is that out of bounds invisible walls, if you get caught inside an out of bounds unit, you will die. But if you get caught inside a ceiling unit, you will just clip down, I'm pretty sure.
So if you're playing around near the snow mounds, you might just bump into this invisible wall. Now, there's something very interesting about this invisible wall, which has to do with the snow mounds. If we look at it from the side and take a sort of cross-section, you can see that each of the snow mounds actually drops down into the ground and covers the invisible wall for a split second before disappearing. And the extra big snow mound covers it a lot. So this is the only invisible wall where unit columns of out of bounds continuously appear and disappear. And because of that, we can actually have the out of bounds appear into Mario, causing him to die. You get it? Like normally, out of bounds prevents you from going into it, but we can go there when the out of bounds is gone and then it reappears into us. So basically, you can just die out of nowhere. And I should mention, if you go back into bounds, you can move around some more, but the death transition already started and so it'll still take you out of the level. Now you have to wonder, did anyone ever die like this in the history of the game? Surely it would take like 1,000 years before this ever happened to someone by chance, right? Well, wonder no more, because it did happen to a guy named Bebop Bandit live on stream. So let's watch.
Dude, it's so funny because he was already mad, dude. And he's trying to speedrun it. This clip's so great. Dude.
And of course I do. Please.
Dude, he's already raging.
Please! For the love of f***ing God! What the heck? Are you f***ing kidding me? What the...
So it just goes to show, when you have so many people playing the game for so many years, crazy rare stuff will happen eventually. And finally in Snowman's Land, we have this wall belonging to the green slope. You know the drill, there's an edge vertex, it misses by...
Dude, okay, what's like the craziest one that he like explains?
It's like Moses parting the Red Sea, but it's the clock hand parting the invisible wall. Then even still in TikTok clock, we have these 3 treadmills. Now the treadmills themselves are cardinally aligned, so there's no issue with them. But focus your attention on these mesh walls between the treadmills. These walls are actually both sides of 2 little boxes. So if we look at them, you can see that they're 3D shapes. It's just that normally you only see the texture for one side of them. Now on the bottom of these boxes,
like,
we
I
have
don't even know how
ceilings.
he did
so the
all this
question
editing,
is, do the
bro.
ceiling hitboxes leak out? Well, you see, the boxes don't have floors on their tops. Instead, they rely solely on the treadmill floors to cover them. So let's see how well that plays out. For this first seam, there's a 1 unit wide gap between the treadmills. Consequently, we see some red area, so you might think some ceiling leaks through. But actually, every integer coordinate is covered by a floor, so all the ceiling is covered. Now let's take a look at the other
Facts, my
seam.
dude.
Between these 2 treadmills,
Dude, I have like a PhD in this after watching this, bro.
there's a 2
like,
unit
know
wide
exactly.
gap. So this time, we do have
Is
integer
there something so obscure to... I don't know, dude. There's just something about fucking...
coordinates that are
Something
ceiling
about
with no
this
floor to cover them.
that gets me
This gives us a
fucking-
1 unit thick, continuous seam of invisible wall between those 2 treadmills. And so as you're climbing from the 2nd treadmill to the 3rd treadmill, you might hit this invisible wall. But that's not actually the full story here. Remember what I said,
This is my
the
favorite
boxes
YouTube
have ceilings
video.
on the bottom, but no floors on the top, so they rely on the treadmill floors to cover the ceilings. But the treadmills are objects, meaning that they're only tangible when Mario's near them. So it probably wasn't a very good idea to cover...
Yeah, they programmed it so, like, the platform objects don't load in their geometry unless Mario's close to there. And since there's no floor under these walls besides the platform, there won't be invisible walls until Mario gets out of range, and then the invisible walls just start skyrocketing up to the ceiling.
for the ceilings with floors that are only sometimes there. I'll illustrate what I mean with
He
a diagram.
visualizes so well, dude.
So here are the 3 treadmills, here's the upper box, and here's the lower box. Now we're actually going to subdivide both boxes into 2 chunks. So both
This guy needs to work on, like, fucking college courses,
boxes have a
dude,
right
like-
chunk and a left chunk. Next, let's add the ceilings on the bottom of the boxes. Now we're going to go through the 4 chunks to see what each of their ceiling hitboxes look like. So
I
first,
think
let's do
he's
the
just
right chunk
looking
of
at the US version of the game.
the lower box. In isolation, its ceiling hitbox looks like this, but this chunk is covered by the lower treadmill. So if Mario's within this radius around the treadmill, then the treadmill will have its floors to cover the ceiling, so there's no invisible wall within that radius. But the invisible wall is there when Mario's outside of the radius. Then next, let's look at the left chunk of the lower box.
Dude, it makes
In
sense.
isolation,
Well, I
its
mean,
ceiling
I-
hitbox looks
I
like
fucking
this.
watched
But
the
this chunk
rest
is
of the
covered by the
video,
middle
just kinda out of
treadmill.
context
So
a
if
little
Mario's
bit.
within this radius, then the
I didn't
treadmill has
explain
its
it, dude.
floors, and so there's no invisible
See?
wall within that radius. But it
Dude, it makes complete sense.
is there
man.
outside of the radius.
Are you, like,
Then
go like
next,
you?
let's look at the right chunk of the upper box. This one's not covered by any treadmill, so
It
the
would
full
go
ceiling
up.
hitbox is exposed. And
Nothing to
finally,
block it.
let's look at the left chunk of the upper box. In isolation, its ceiling hitbox looks like this, but this chunk is covered by the upper treadmill.
So
So
if
if
you're in
Mario's
range
within
of
this
it,
radius, then the treadmill has
then
its
it doesn't
floors,
exist,
and so
'cause
there's
the
no
floor is
invisible
there.
wall within that
Got 'em.
radius. But it is there outside of the radius.
Easy,
And so
dude,
now you can see
simple.
the true nature of these invisible
mean,
walls.
see?
Specifically, we have 4 separate
Like,
chunks
duh.
of invisible wall. One of them is fully exposed, and the other 3 exist only outside of the tangibility radius of the corresponding treadmill. Now I'll show what these invisible walls look like in the game. So we have the right chunk of the lower box.
Dude, the way
left
he
chunk of-
renders each individual unit in the fucking... in the fucking explanation too. It's fucking
the lower box, the right chunk of the upper box, and the left chunk of the upper box. So yeah, this is the true nature of these invisible
dude,
walls.
and they're so
so
thick.
you can see that the lower
They're
invisible
so thick.
walls
One of them
rise
is
up
so
into the
thick,
walkway,
dude.
while the upper
It's
invisible
not just a
walls
couple
rise
units.
up all
Dude, that's unacceptable, bro. There's like a thick ass invisible wall, just bro.
the way to the ceiling of the course.
Are you
so
kidding
even
me?
between the first and second treadmill, there's
This is
still
like
the possibility
I think this
of
is the worst
bonking if you
invisible
jump
wall.
up high enough.
I
And
think
because
this is
the
the
upper
worst one.
invisible wall rises all the way to the top,
Dude, it's literally right in front of where you need to go. Look. Dude, this is the craziest invisible wall in the game, in my opinion.
it can get in your way if you try
I
to
love
long
Mario
jump from the
64.
clock.
I love Mario 64. Mario 64, yeah, I think it's a more important video game than Super Mario Bros. Original. Like, it's so...
Hand over to the thwomp. And remember, it's not just a single seam of invisible wall, it's a whole
Dude,
box
this is
area's
troll.
worth.
Dude, anyone who's bonked there, and dude, I've like consciously in my head tried to avoid this area. Because I think in my head, like, I mapped out over time, like, okay, the game glitches here. That's why.
So there's really no chance of you getting lucky and passing right through it, like you could with many of the other invisible walls. And then one more in TikTok Clock, we have this wall on the uppermost treadmill. Just like the first treadmill, it has two edge vertices on the top.
This is
When we
such a
zoom
great-
in, you
dude.
can see that the right one
This is
lets
my
the
favorite
ceiling jut
video of all
out, and the
time.
left one is exactly aligned. So just on this side
Yeah,
of the
obviously,
treadmill,
you have
we
to
have some
get-
invisible
yeah.
wall.
The thing is, the game's entire source code got leaked. So he has access to the literal
And
code.
remember,
That's how he's
because these
figuring this all
invisible wall
out.
units stem from an object, I cap their height at the object's tangibility
Yeah.
radius. And so even at the very top of TikTok Clock, there's this final invisible wall to worry about. Then in Rainbow Ride, we're back to the ship. We have this wall.
So yeah. Let me show you guys the montage of all the invisible walls. So since I've gotten you guys this deep into it, we gotta play this video. Come on. Yeah, dude, Nintendo's whole fucking game got leaked, bro. Look at all this fucking bullshit. All these glitchy ass. Oh, the sign here is a crazy one too. Okay, I need to just hop into the game. I just need to hop into the game, dude. Dude, Mario 64. Dude, Mario 64 Mario's a creature too. His model is like so low poly, like unnecessarily so, even for the console. It's so funny. I fucking love him. It's like my favorite costume in Mario Odyssey. Okay, well, there's an invisible wall here. I might hit it. Yeah, I did. But there's something interesting here with the sign. Okay, so this sign, it's supposed to be like, you know, 4 walls and a ceiling, but they programmed it to be, I think, 1 wall, 2 ceilings, and a floor. So I think you can just like walk into it. Yeah, see? And it extends all the way upward, and it's like one of the most consistent invisible walls. So that's what's showing up right here, dude. This big, thick wall here. Why, though? I mean, dude. Well, have I got a video for you? Dude, this is exactly why,
this
dude.
wall. So you might be flying along.
This is exactly
there are
why.
vertices that are meant to be aligned, but for whatever reason, they're a bit off. You know how the previous cause of invisible walls stemmed from a misaligned edge vertex? That one was at least understandable, because the edge vertex had to have integer coordinates,
you taking
it
this
couldn't
down?
be
This
placed
how?
exactly on the
Are you
edge.
paying attention?
But in this new case, there's really no excuse. The programmers literally just didn't line up 2 floor vertices that could have easily been lined up, causing there to be floor gaps.
Duh. Obviously, dude. No, it's that the walls don't, basically the ceiling hitbox works in a way where it needs to be a floor, or else the hitbox will rise all the way up. And in majority of the game, obviously, the walls and the ceilings line up, but there's a couple units in some places where there's like a little gap and it seeps through, and that the invisible walls of the ceiling hitbox is seeping through, because for whatever reason they didn't make the hitbox stop at the top of the ceiling. They just made it go on forever for whatever reason. I mean, they were programming one of the first ever 3D games, so they had to like make everything from scratch, and obviously some wonky, you know, stuff happened because of it. But these are all the invisible walls visualized. Look at how fucking buggy this game is, bro. And we love it, dude. But Mario 64's buggy. We love it. We embrace it, dude. Sonic's buggy. Oh, no, no, no. Bad transition in 3D. Come on, dude. Even the Womps have invisible walls. Dude, above the fucking... Bro, this is what you're dealing with when you play. You just can't see it. I mean, there's a chance you don't hit them, but there's a chance that you do. Like, I think on average, I think it's like a 20% chance that you hit these walls. But obviously some are easier to hit than others. Yeah, it also depends how fast you're going, yeah. The slower you are, the easier it is to hit. And he explains in detail with diagrams exactly how all of these exist in the 4-hour video. This is like the accumulation of all his research. And he took 10 months to make it. Only 10 months, dude. Fucking nuts. Look at all this shit. Dude, even the fucking little fella has it, dude. Dude, this one's crazy. They misaligned the hitbox with the actual like texture. So like with the collision, the game's collision, the collision for this object is here when it's visually here. That one's crazy, dude. Dude, there's like a group of people who just like research Mario 64 in particular for fun. Another one who makes great ROM hacks is like Kazanetmar. I don't know if that's how you say his name, but he makes some really good ROM hacks. I actually played some of them on stream before. He knows a lot about the game too. TikTok clock is crazy with the invisible walls. This is like unacceptable levels of invisible walls, especially with how this stage is designed. Like TikTok clock is definitely like the word. The rest is like excusable. Like you can, it's just here and there. It's whatever. But like with this is like insane, dude. This is too much, especially with how thick those ones are, bro. Like right in front of where you need to go to, dude. That's another like completely solid one because like there's like an error in like the way the floors prioritize themselves with the chimney underneath, so it acts as if one floor is, but it's weird. I mean, he explains it, but it's. And then that's the one invisible wall that you can actually fall through because it's a floor invisible wall. I don't know how that works again. I think, and then this is obviously everyone who's played Mario 64. You know, there's holes in the fucking ceiling, and then you fall off. This has happened to everybody. Everybody knows about it, but here's it visualized. I actually thought it was like a certain square. Like I knew one square was safer than the other. I don't know. I didn't know it looked like this, but yeah, I knew these existed. Oh, and there's invisible walls that you can, like, moon jump off of as well. For the green ones. Dude. So yeah, that's what happens when you go into the ceiling instead of out of bounds. Dude, imagine being a designer of Mario 64 and this guy just spends fucking 4 hours explaining everything you fucked up.
So let's look
like these are all your mistakes. I'm gonna highlight them, dude. I stole that from one of the comments in here. I'm pretty sure someone says that. Note to self, be careful rounding, otherwise someone will make a 4-hour-long video tearing apart every one of your mistakes 30 years later. So true. Oh, here's another one about Mario 64, where there's like a myth that like cosmic rays affected a cartridge.
Is unfortunately common whenever people talk about speedrunning. Myths such as glitches are cheating, TaskBot is a machine learning AI, and speedrun being 2 words instead of 1. However, one particular speedrunning myth stands above the rest in terms of how widespread it is, how widely accepted it is among the casual audience, and how much it continues to annoy speedrunners and taskers alike. Because it probably didn't even happen. The myth that a cosmic ray from outer space caused a spontaneous upwarp that saved time in a Super Mario 64 speedrun. Now, you've probably heard about this incident either from a YouTube
Dude. And I think he gets into the code to explain why it's like improbable or whatever.
December 8th, 2022, Peruvians. When a bit is flipped, it adds or subtracts a value representing a clean power of 2 to a byte in memory. The closest power of 2 to 900 is 1024.
I fucking love these Mario
according
64.
to the experts,
The Mario 64 autism community, dude. I fucking love it. And Ocarina of Time has like the same shit. It's like I feel like the 3 main games who get this treatment is like Majora's Mask, Ocarina of Time, and Mario 64. Like the 3D adventure kind of N64 games from Nintendo. Dude, like I know some of you guys probably have seen it, like it was discovered like 2015 or something, but like there's a whole thing where you can like warp from the first boss of Ocarina of Time to the final boss with like some weird like in-game manipulation. Oh, this one's crazy too.
When the main room was being cloned, so were the Dynapolys.
Dude.
This continuous cloning led to Dynapoly data leaking into other parts of memory, which in turn...
Dude, the way it happened, okay, so I feel like with Mario 64, it's more like, kind of like physical things that are going on in the game, like you seep through a floor, or you like bonk into something, or like there's some weird movement going on. But with Ocarina of Time, it's like, usually like the glitches are all about like code and like warping and stuff like that. It's like interesting, the different kind of glitches you find in these different games.
Corrupted static polys in the room, causing them to seemingly vanish. Of course, such corruption could potentially do more than just delete collision. It could change other properties of the collision as well, like transforming a polygon into a loading zone. Nat hypothesized that if you could somehow create a corruption where the position data of a Dynapoly's vertex could overflow on top of a specific pocket of code of another polygon, you could feasibly create a loading zone to an exit that is listed within that map's scene. Coincidentally, thanks to Mr. Cheese's research on scene exits...
Dude, and then the usernames of the people they credit to is like fucking Mr. Cheese and shit. It's fucking awesome.
Time to leave. Back in Kakariko, we can use a trick called lunge storage to increase the distance from a jump slash with a stick to clip past the gate to Death Mountain. Or, if you're an expert, you can use a chew to do a hyper-extended super slide from the well and past the gate.
Yeah, I'm playing it on purpose out of context.
Afterwards,
funny, you guys
we
don't
rush
know.
to Dodongo's cabin before it
I
turns
don't even
night.
know this part.
Once inside,
I
we
haven't
blow up
watched this video in a
the
while.
mud wall with a chew and then head into the main room. Here, we do a setup to get out of
love this
bounds
shit.
so we can clone the main
go.
room.
Yeah,
We
clone
set up the
room.
infinite
Yep,
sword
yep.
glitch off of the BMOS,
Yep.
which prevents Link from
Obviously.
falling off of edges. This property, plus the ability to have a grounded state
Yes.
when shielding damage mid-air from an explosion, allows for
True.
bomb hovering, which we need to do to get into position.
Yes.
After getting ISG, we mega flip off of the BMOS's beam to clip out of bounds.
Also,
Next
the terms
is
for everything, mega
the
flip.
tricky part. Some precise twisted hovers with the chews to
Yes.
reach behind a pillar, and
Yup.
then a mega flip off of another BMOS to get into
Yep,
the
yep, yep.
nearby unloaded
I'm following the guy, like I'm playing the game right now. Yep, like. Okay, let me figure out how to.
room behind the loading plane from the
Okay,
main
next
room.
step.
Now that Link is there, we
Like, imagine someone tries to
side
replicate
hop
this
between the
from
load
this
plane
video.
3 times to clone the main room.
Okay.
Then, on a specific
Only
green
3.
frame, we walk back
Green
in
frame?
bounds. In
Okay,
order
not
for
a
this
red
to
frame.
work, we need to chain 2 frame-perfect pauses back to back,
Okay.
since those pauses will manipulate memory in just the right way for the wrong warp to work.
Yeah.
We can tell what values will be set in memory based on the set of pixels we see on screen when pausing, and thankfully,
True.
they are consecutive. If done correctly, boom, Ganon floor. From here, you just beat Ganon,
This
and
is
the
real,
run
by the way.
is over.
This is not a parody.
Overall,
this is real.
this new route
That actually happens if you do everything he said. Yeah, I love how he says this is the tricky part, as though everything he's done is perfectly reasonable.
out of bounds. Next is a tricky part.
Dude, that's the part that's tricky. Changes laws of physics. Next is the tricky part. Oh my god, bro. Oh my god. It's fucking awesome.